papers.
Dreams come true tonight as players across the globe will hear their names called in the 2022 NBA Draft. Welcome into our Pelicans pre-draft show. I'm Erin Summers, joined by Daniel Sallerson. Over the next half hour, we're going to break down all the decisions on deck for the Pelicans. The draft itself starts at 7 o'clock Central on ESPN. You can follow along on Pelicans.com or interact with us on Twitter. Hashtag Pelicans Draft or head to @PelicansNBA. Daniel, I'm excited. I assume you are too, right?
One of my favorite days of the year, no doubt about it, especially with the Pelicans having the number 8 pick, 2 second-round picks, a team coming off a huge playoff experience against the Phoenix Suns. No doubt tonight is going to be exciting for New Orleans. They're only going to get better tonight.
All right, so the draft is 2 rounds, 60 picks usually, 30 picks in the first round. This year, however, there are only 28 picks in the second round, as Miami and Chicago both had to forfeit their draft picks in the second round due to some tampering issues. So we're going to have 58 picks in tonight's draft, and it all starts with the lottery. That's 14 teams. Let's take a look at that order right now.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me, Aaron, is the fact that Portland at number 7 just made a trade yesterday for Jeremy Grant. When you look at a guy like Jeremy Grant, adding a veteran piece like that shows that maybe they're not much into rebuild mode as we thought when they traded C.J. McCollum to us last offseason or during the middle of the season. So when you look at Portland, they could be looking to trade out now and maybe acquiring another veteran piece or getting someone that could be ready now. So a team that's right in front of the Pelicans. And Portland is one team to keep an eye on in Oklahoma City with 2 of those lottery picks at 2 and 12. They have an embarrassment of riches as far as number of draft picks are concerned. There could be a team on the move, maybe trade one of their picks. There could be a lot of teams. It could be very active tonight. Who maybe slides into the top 10, who maybe ventures their way out of it.
The Pelicans themselves are in a very unique situation. They are the only team in the lottery that also made it to the playoffs. So we're sitting pretty heading into tonight. Don't need whoever we pick to actually produce immediately because the roster's looking pretty good. How did the Pelicans find themselves in this situation?
Yeah, the big thing is as far as how we got the number 8 pick was courtesy of the Los Angeles Lakers. This is the gift that keeps on giving. Not only did you get Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball in the deal. Josh Hart was one of the pieces you got C.J. McCollum for. But you also have this top 10 pick. If it didn't land in the top 10, it would have belonged to the Memphis Grizzlies. But now it is the number 8 pick for the Pelicans. So as you mentioned, a top 10 pick for a team that made the playoffs is pretty rare. But also, this is not it. There's a pick swap next year as well for the Pelicans. And so if the Lakers don't make the playoffs and the Pelicans do, they can easily just flip-flop their picks, and you might be looking at another lottery pick. So again, this pick has not only helped you acquire players, but it's also been able to get you some young talent. So that's how we got here tonight, the fact that we are in the playoffs last year, and we're able to pick tonight at number 8.
I guess we can just say thanks to the Lakers for that one, and we'll take more from you next year. It's going to be a fun night ahead, and we want everybody here at the Smoothie King Center and watching online to interact with us on Twitter. Make sure you're hashtagging Pelicans Draft. You can also check out the poll that we have. You can use the QR code, scan it, it's on your screen right here, and answer some of our poll questions. The first question that we have is, what do you think is the greatest position need for the Pelicans? Daniel, I definitely want some more scoring, some more offense, please.
Yeah, I think the big thing as far as what position you want is you see point guard and shooting guard up there. How about a combination? How about some depth at the guard position? You were able to acquire C.J. McCollum, a huge asset to the team. You saw the emergence of Jose Alvarado. You have Devontae Graham, and then you don't know what Kyra Lewis Jr. is going to be. You had that ACL tear, but you started to see him grow as far as his development early on in the season. So for me, it could be a guard, it could be a shooting guard. You need the shooting as you are a bottom 5 team in 3-point percentage and makes, but I think that facilitator at point guard is something that you can need also. So I would combine them. I'm going to cheat the poll and say both of them are the ones that the Pelicans need right now.
All right, I guess you can do that because this is our show, right? You can do whatever you want. We are going to check back in with those answers to the poll questions later on in the show. Our second poll question, again, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen, is what do you think the Pelicans are going to do with that number 8 pick? Who do you think they're going to pick?
That's the beauty about this pick is there's so many options. You have 4 on that board, but there's also some that we'll get to later on that might not necessarily be in the poll. But the one name that sticks out to me is Dyson Daniels. He's a guy that's been linked to the Pelicans in a ton of mock drafts. He's not a guy that played in college. He was the one that played with the G League last year. He's a guy that can be productive on the defensive end. Probably still needs a little work on the offensive side, but that's something that can be taken care of developmentally by some of the assistant coaches. So for me, keep an eye on Dyson Daniels tonight as someone that could be linked to the Pelicans.
Thanks for that insight, Daniel. Insight from one of the guys at the top of the Pelicans' entire front office, GM Trajan Langdon. I was able to sit down with him earlier this week, get his insight on the Pelicans draft, how they approach the draft, and who he thinks would be a good fit for the Pelicans.
I'm here with Pelicans GM Trajan Langdon. We're approaching the draft. Can you give me a 30,000-foot view of the draft process? That's where we're going, 30,000.
30,000, like within the last week? Or are we talking like the whole year?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Okay, 30,000 pretty quickly. So obviously we have draft that's stateside, or prospects that are stateside, and then you have international prospects. So we have an international division of scouts that are responsible for prospects that are all around the world, Europe, Asia, going down to Australia, up in Canada, and then obviously we have all the schools that are here in the NCAA. Obviously Division I is what we really concern ourselves with. So we have West Coast scouts, we have East Coast scouts, we have scouts in Texas, and Bryson Graham oversees all of that. He and I both oversee the people, our international scouting division that oversees the rest of the world. And Bryson runs point on all this. They do a fantastic job. And throughout the year, they're obviously scouting, whether it be live or by tape, all of the players all around the world. And then we'll funnel them, try to decide what are the top 60 guys over the course of the year. A lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, and then they'll filter down to a top 60. And then we come together here now and really try to finalize not only who the top 60 are, but in what rank, what order. We got all our scouts in last week, so that becomes a lot of fun debates and good dinners, good meetings. So that, and then we kind of finalize maybe between 1 and 2 spots here in the week after they come in, because some things do change in those 4 or 5 days. But you know, and during that process, I work hand in hand with Bryson throughout the entire year. So, but he and our group do a fantastic job, and they're a lot of fun to work with.
What are some of the things that you're evaluating when you're looking at a particular player?
I think first and foremost, the person, the character of that prospect. How are they going to fit into our environment, into our culture? The one that we have not only as an organization, but it's Willie Green and his staff have developed as a team. I think we want high character guys, first of all, that are going to come in and fit and understand the role. And then we want guys that play hard and compete. I think those are things that really stand high. And then when we're evaluating talent, they're going to have to be a certain particular skill level that we're looking at, that they're going to have to either be at or that potentially we think they can get to.
You don't have to say any names or positions or anything specific for this draft.
Yeah.
What do you think the Pelicans could use heading into this next season?
One, I think at number 8, we're going to get a player that we like. We're going to get a high character young man, for sure. We want him to play hard. We want him to compete. Some of the same exact things that I talked about. I think size, we're going to get somebody with size that we like. And potential to develop into, a versatile and skilled player. Mm-hmm. And I think of the many players that we're looking at, he checks all those boxes. So we're really excited about our position at 8 heading into the draft.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you for giving some insight into what a Pelicans draft looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That was some great insight from General Manager Trajan Langdon about the Pelicans' approach to the draft this season. Daniel, what stood out to you in that conversation?
Well, a couple of things stood out to me. It's basically, when you look at, he has a board with 60 players on it. So look, they have ranked 1 through 60. This is a process that starts way early on in the season when they're drafting college players, going overseas and looking at players going to the G League. So for me, that stood out to me about how that board is going to change throughout the night. The other thing that stuck out to me is what they look for in certain players, and the biggest thing is character. Of course, we saw it with some of the guys drafted last year with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Jose Alvarado, but the one thing that's been a common factor about this team, whether it was the 1-12 start or making it into the playoffs, was the character, the locker room, and the chemistry and the camaraderie with this team. I think, of course, he looks at that when it comes to drafting the players. The skill set may come second, but the character is what sticks out, and that's why you've had some success last season.
There was definitely a lot of fight in this team. It was struggle to start the season, but things definitely turned around and this team played very hard for each other. Definitely good character on this team. And a lot of it started with David Griffin, Executive Vice President. He joined the team in 2019. The past 3 drafts have been extremely successful for the Pelicans, and it all started with that #1 pick, Zion Williamson, in 2019.
Yeah, that guy turned out pretty okay for the New Orleans Pelicans, and Zion Williamson. You saw what he was able to do 2 years ago, and the fact that you saw the capabilities of what he can do: 27 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, the ability to drive to the paint point. Zion was in attack. You had other things that he could do. Obviously, it was tough not seeing him on the floor last year, but now Zion Williamson is basically like a free agent for you. He's a guy that you're adding as another all-star piece to a team that already made a playoff run. He's a guy that can shoot. You saw what he did against the San Antonio Spurs in his debut, so someone like Zion Williamson is a guy you can look out for. And then you have Jackson Hayes, a guy that was picked number 8 overall in that same draft. You saw what he was able to do last season, kind of making that leap. It took one trip to the G League for him to kind of get that wake-up call. He was able to sit next to Jonas Valanciunas in the starting lineup and really force other teams to have to adjust. So with Jackson Hayes there, you see what he can do running to the rim, creating all those dunks. He has some of the best missed dunks as well, some of the things that he's able to do talent-wise as far as his athleticism. Now how can he extend it maybe to the three-point line, maybe going to the rim, maybe that ball handling skill? Someone like Jackson Hayes could be someone that could be a big factor next year. And speaking of next year, you hope to have Kyra Lewis Jr. back in the fold as well, the 13th overall pick 2 years ago, a guy that tore his ACL early on in the season, but you were starting to see him get ahead of the curve as far as him being comfortable on the court, being that backup point guard behind a guy like Devontae Graham. So for him, you want to see that speed come back, as he was known for that versatility and that speed. He was starting to get his shooting down, especially from that mid-range, and that's someone that you can look out for again next year. Then, of course, we have to talk about the rookies from last year, and you have to start with Trey Murphy, number 17 overall. What a steal for that. Leading the NBA as far as rookies in three-point percentage, a guy that can knock it down from anywhere on the court, a guy that also started rebounding a little bit, started getting some putbacks. He felt more comfortable. It was one of those situations for Trey that was just simply shoot the basketball. He could shoot 10, 11 times. Willie Green would allow him to let it fly. It was just him having the confidence of knowing that he can knock it down. So when I see Trey Murphy next year, let's see what he's able to do, whether it's the ball handling and whether it's going inside a lot more. And then, of course, Herb Jones, not on Herb, being one of the more popular players on the team at pick number 35. You want to talk about a steal, Herb Jones at number 35, a guy that's defense stood out to everyone around the league, would always have to guard the opposing team's best player. That's a tall task to do for a guy that is just 20 years old. He was up to the challenge. He considered it fun that he was on defense guarding one of those top guys, and then the offense started to follow up, started knocking down some threes. He was able to get some steals and lead some fast breaks. He provided that spark when the Pelicans were in a scoring drought to get some of those easy looks. So for Herb Jones, the future is so bright for him, and it's only going to get better as he progresses in the NBA.
Speaking of steals, the Pelicans have been able to make some steals in the undrafted free agent market. When everything's done tonight, it's going to get a little crazy, and they're going to be looking for the next Jose Alvarado or Naji Marshall. What has stood out to you about how the Pelicans have been able to find those diamonds in the rough?
It's all about player development, and it's all about that scouting. Again, it's a huge thing for the Pelicans to be able to find these guys that are not even drafted. They have these lists, maybe in that top 60 that Trajan mentioned, that maybe if some of them didn't get drafted, you're immediately calling them after it. If you think that their job is done as soon as the draft is over, you're mistaken, because their work goes far into the night trying to acquire the next Jose Alvarado, the next Naji Marshall. But those are two guys in the last 2 years that start off as two-way contracts. Didn't even know if they were going to make it past training camp, getting the opportunity. Naji using his defense and that intensity to be able to get his contract. And then you saw Jose Alvarado, Grand Theft Alvarado, the steals, the passion, the excitement, what he was able to do with this team, what you saw him do on Chris Paul in the playoffs. If you could find another one like that, the Pelicans are going to be in really good shape. But those were two big hits by the Pelicans front office, being able to find Naji and Jose without being drafted.
So many exciting moments from last season, so many players that we cannot wait to watch playing on this court in the 2022-23 season, and you do not want to miss out. Make sure you grab tickets. We have a lot of really exciting promotional opportunities coming up. There's a big ticket plan deadline coming up on June 30th, 1 week from today. So lock in on a full season plan and you'll get up to $2,200 in bonus credits to spend on team merch or in-arena concessions, which it's really a lot of nachos if you think about it. Visit the site to learn more about all the benefits of becoming a season ticket holder. All right, Daniel, we put it off long enough. The Pelicans have the number 8 pick. Who are some names that Pelicans fans might hear called at the 8th spot?
Man, there's a ton of people to go on the list, but one of the main ones I look at is Benedict Matherin, the guard out of Arizona. This is a guy that was more off the ball, was able to create shots on hard screens, but this is a guy that has taken the onus to be more of a shot creator or a playmaker in his second year out of Arizona. He's a guy that can go number 5. He's a guy that can go number 10, so it's going to become dependent on what the need is for this team. Another guy that I mentioned in the poll question is Dyson Daniels, a guy that could be the number 7 pick. He could fall to the Pelicans at number 8, a guy who could score, get his own stops on defense. He's 19. He's ready to play defensively in the NBA. The one bugaboo about him, though, is the lack of offense. But again, with the development of what Fred Vincent can do shooting-wise and other things, you could maybe afford to have Dyson Daniels be one of those project players that can be ready or at least produce on the defensive end. Busan Jiang is another one that you could see the Pelicans. He's been getting a lot of traction, a guy that was maybe projected to go 10 through 12, 12 through 14. He is gaining a lot of steam as far as maybe being one of those guys that picks number 18. 6'10" shot creator, tons of upside, has ball handling, has playmaking. Some have even compared him to a younger Brandon Ingram, which is a very good sign of the fact that if you get a younger Brandon Ingram or a guy that he will need a little bit more time to develop. But again, like as we talked about earlier, that's something you could afford with the roster that the Pelicans have right now.
The draft starts at 7 o'clock, and some of the first few names that we should hear off the board are Auburn's Jabari Smith, Gonzaga's big man Chet Holmgren, and Duke's Paulo Banchero. After that, it could get really interesting. We've heard a lot about Kentucky's Shaedon Sharpe. He's somebody else that the Pelicans have looked at, although he's been dropping a little bit in the draft because of the fact that he didn't play last season. So depending on where some people start to fall after the 5th pick, it might affect what the Pelicans do.
Yeah, this could be a very active draft as far as trades, as we mentioned earlier. So who knows which team might be selecting. As I mentioned, Portland at number 7. Does Indiana trade at 6? Does Detroit want to keep their pick at number 5? But you said there are options. I think that's the beauty about what those names on those lists presented is you have guys from overseas, you have guys from the G League, you have guys that played college ball. We saw what you drafted with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Jose Alvarado. The one thing that they had in common, they were all 4 years at their college, so you got that experience that they were able to have at the college level. Some of these guys do not have that much experience, but again, what the Pelicans have the option of is kind of training someone to get a little bit better as he progresses. So yeah, there's so many options. Number 1 through 3 could be already locked in, but at the same time, this was probably the first time since 2013 that we didn't have a consensus till maybe earlier on today, which goes to show you how wide open this draft could be.
The Pelicans have definitely been a team, especially under David Griffin, who have opted to make trades. In the last 2 drafts, they've made big splashes. It's how we got Trey Murphy, as you mentioned, last season. So it's something to look out for. Keep an eye out to see what other teams are doing ahead of the Pelicans.
Yeah, when you look at having 14 guys on the roster for next season, that's certainly an option for David Griffin. Where is there going to be room for one of these guys that get drafted even at number 8? So if you do draft a guy that's NBA ready, there's your roster spot. If not, you can put one of them in the G League. You can put one of them as a 2-way contract. But the biggest thing is you mentioned trades. They could trade down, add a veteran piece if they want to make that next leap. So plenty of options for David Griffin tonight, whether they pick at 8 or they fall below, or maybe they move up. Who knows?
It's going to be really interesting. Luckily, I was able to catch up with someone else in the front office, Assistant General Manager Bryson Graham, and he gave us some insight on tonight's draft, what they're going to do in free agency, and how they were able to land some of those players like Jose Alvarado and Herb Jones.
You've climbed the ranks, you're now the assistant general manager, you have a big hand in the draft. What exactly is your role as far as the draft goes?
Yeah, sure. So when Griff got the job, I was, still here with Dale, and basically just, not really having a previous relationship with Griff, we got to know each other, and a lot of it came through going out on the road because the draft was kind of happening in June. He came in the previous month, so we spent a lot of time on the road together, got to know each other and talk players. And my role with the team is basically building out a board and having things in order for us when it comes to making a decision, and really trying to guide both Griff and Trajan in the right direction to help make ultimately their decision on who's the best fit for our team.
So when does that process start?
Yeah, it starts early in the year. We can be at college practices starting in September. And so in September, we're just kind of building profiles on players, watching a ton of practices, and then you go into preseason tournaments, from preseason tournaments to conference play, from conference play to the tournament, and to the NCAA tournament, and then you have draft workouts. And so there's like layers to, the season, but it really starts early in the fall.
You have all of those people that come in, the draft happens. When the draft's over, then you have the undrafted free agents.
Yes.
And you've hit on several over the past few years, most notably Jose Alvarado, and then before that, Najee Marshall. How do you find those type of players?
Well, it's really our group. We build out a draft board, and we really try to follow our draft board. And Griff and Trajan have confidence, in the board, and it just kind of like, crossing guys off as they go along. So internally, we may be a lot higher on a player than other organizations are. And I think some of that, some of our good fortune has come down to that. And just the leadership that Griffin, Trajan and their scouting eye as well, of saying let's roll with it. Let's sign, they check the boxes that mean the most to us. So, yeah.
Another player that stood out last season, Herb Jones, the second round pick.
Yeah.
Is that kind of something that you saw that you really liked, or what was it that stood out to you about Jones that was able to get him to be as good as he was this year for us?
Sure. Really good question. Herb was a 4-year player, and he was very decorated. Like he won a lot. He was always impacted winning. The one thing about Herb was his shooting that was in question, and rightfully so. Like his shooting numbers weren't great, but we have a really good player development staff, and Fred Vinson is a really good shooting coach. And so we kind of have, a competitive advantage on other teams, because we can take risk with players that maybe lack in the shooting area, but cover every other aspect. So Herb was a really good defender. He was a really good passer. He had a high IQ, and he had great size for his position. And so the one area that you're kind of in question where the shooting. If Herb was a really good shooter in college, there's a 0% chance he'd be at 35. and so we were able to work on those skills, and he's a super hard worker, and it just worked out.
It definitely worked out. It was really fun to watch this season. Thank you, Bryson, so much for spending some time talking to me ahead of the draft.
Absolutely.
That was some great insight from Bryson. Really appreciate the time that they spent this week, as busy as both he and Trajan are. There is a lot that goes into the pick for tonight. And it's not just that one pick. We have the second round too. We're gonna get to that in a minute, but I said we were gonna get back to those poll questions. So let's take a look and see what some of the results are. First question that we had was, what do you think the greatest position need for the Pelicans is? And it looks like shooting guard. I think that's what you said, Daniel.
The audience is just as smart as I am, so absolutely. Shooting guard and point guard, that's 84% of the vote. So again, guard depth, I think, is one of the biggest things that the Pelicans need. So whether it is a shooting guard, whether it is a point guard, I feel like the fans got it right. One of those may be drafted tonight.
All right, second question. What should the Pelicans do with that number 8 pick? Let's check out who the fans think we should pick. Well, the fans, I don't think that they know yet. Oh, here we go. the results are in. And they do think we should take Dyson Daniels, the guard, out of the G League Ignite. It's going to be interesting to see what the Pelicans do. I think that is the consensus pick that we've seen on most of the mock drafts.
Yeah, these fans have been doing their homework because that's exactly what I feel like the consensus has been so far for the Pelicans. A guy like him, again, has a ton of upside, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that he would be a no-brainer if the Pelicans are able to get him at number 8.
We talked a lot about the fact that whoever we do draft does not have to produce at this exact moment. We only have one roster spot left on the team, and then other than that, it's going to be a two-way contract, maybe stash somebody where you draft somebody that plays overseas for a little while until the Pelicans are able to factor them into the team, because we do have more picks. We have the second round. We have 41 and 52. So what are some of the options that you're seeing there?
Well, you have some options as far as if you go right to the G League and have them develop there. You can also, as you mentioned, stash them and put them overseas and let them develop a little bit. They can be one of your two-way contract guys. They can simply just be training camp invites and also summer league invites, and then seeing what they are, they can go to another team and then you can pick them up later. The biggest thing is just kind of seeing what they are made of. And I think the biggest thing as far as Herbert Jones, I think they realized in summer league that this has a guy that is definitely going to be on the roster, and Willie Green knew that he was going to play significant minutes. So you might find that diamond in the rough at 41 and 52. I don't think you actually need a position with this one. I think when you look at Trajan Langdon's board, it's going to be one of those first available in that top 60. But again, it doesn't have to be someone. You're not going to find a Herb Jones every year. You hope to do so. Nikola Jokic was the number 41 pick overall for the Nuggets, and he has won an NBA MVP. So if you can get someone like Herb or someone like Nikola Jokic, you can be in good shape. But the Pelicans have some options. They can use that pick to either trade out of the draft, get some cash considerations, or even trade back in if they found a late first-round pick that's someone else they want to get.
So many options at play tonight for the Pelicans with the number 8 pick, 41 and 52. As we've mentioned, you don't have to play right away. We have the time to develop these players, the time to develop the talent, and that's something that the Pelicans have done very well. They have the people on their staff in order to help kind of bring out some of the offense. We saw it with Herb Jones. We've seen it with several other players, being able to increase that part of their game. You're going to get somebody that's a complete player at the top of the draft. But anybody after that, it is going to be a developmental process. So they're in a really good position here, knowing that they don't need somebody to step up immediately.
Everyone has a weakness, no matter if you're picked at number 1 or if you're picked at 58 tonight. You're going to have a weakness. Someone's going to talk about the downside of Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, someone like Paolo Banchero. There's going to be stuff that they're going to have to work on when they are a main contributor of this team. So no matter if it's number 8, 41, or 52, there is going to be some development process. We mentioned Fred Vincent as the shooting guru that has done wonders for guys like Herb Jones. Earlier was Lonzo Ball when he was a part of the Pelicans. So if you draft a guy defensively, you could afford to develop him offensively. You have an assistant coach in Teresa Weatherspoon that works with the guards, worked heavily with Kyra Lewis, with Jose Alvarado. She is very well liked among the Pelicans players. So that's another option you can have as far as using those second-round picks and just developing them and see what they have in store.
Hey, as long as everybody stays healthy, and we know Zion has been cleared for action. He's been at the facility practicing. He's been out in the streets in New Orleans practicing, taking to the court. So a lot of good things ahead in 2022-23, and you don't want to miss out. You want to be a part of the action by getting your season tickets. Make sure you lock into a full season plan so you can join us at exclusive events like the one we're broadcasting from right here. We have over 1,000 people here on the floor at the SKC enjoying the draft festivities, and everyone here is going to take home a really cool limited edition Not On Her poster designed by our in-house illustrator Madison. The next gathering will take place this fall, and you do not want to miss out. You can join Daniel Salerson and myself here for all the games. You can listen on the radio. We're really excited about the season, and we appreciate everybody for joining us. The draft will take place at 7 o'clock, so make sure you tune in. Follow us at pelicans.com. We'll have complete coverage throughout the night, or join us on Twitter at PelicansNBA, #PelicansDraft. For Daniel Salerson and myself, really enjoyed talking to you tonight. Enjoy the draft, and go Pels.